Okay, wonderful. Here we go. So you're asking me the question first, right? See the end? Well, you're asking me about, yeah, I'm gonna start it.
Yep.
Okay. All right, wonderful. So we've done the home test. We have lots of people here that are with us in person, and we really appreciate that. It looks like soon it's going to be standing room only. So we're really thrilled that everybody was able to come today. So thank you so much for that. Today's a big day, and have to say that I'm really, really honored to be able to share this with you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm honored to be here, and I want to thank City Tech and CUNY, and of course, Karen Goodlad for allowing me and honoring me with telling my mom's story on CUNY's Anti-Hate Day, the first one of 3 in 3 years, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to start by introducing ourselves, and then we're going to hear a little bit about how this project came to be, and then we will let Joanne do the presentation, and then we'll take some time for questions from everybody. So we'll do that. So I know most of the people know you, but why not introduce yourself?
So my name is Joanne Lewin-Jacus, and I teach at New York City College of Technology, and I've known many people here for a long time, and I'm really excited to see that there's some people who signed up for this through Zoom and here, but people from my childhood, people from my former temple, people from my family, and people who are descendants of other people who are in the Kindertransport with my mother, who were at St. Mary's with her. So it's amazing what social media could do. Thank you.
Thank you. No, you're welcome. And my name is Karen Goodlad. So actually, most of you on Zoom don't know me, but Joanne and I worked together, and we were also neighbors, or
yeah, we carpooled together for many
years. So over the last 20 years, we really did a lot of carpooling together. We got to know each other. And then when this opportunity came up, she and I spoke, and it was just really, it was important for us to be able to do this.
Yeah.
And which leads us here to the first time that you're presenting.
This is the first time I am presenting this particular presentation that I started working on through the Kindertransport Association. And for those of you who don't know what first of all, the Kindertransport was an operation to evacuate Jewish children from Nazi-occupied countries in Europe. And they went to the United Kingdom between 1938 and 1940 until the war broke out, until World War II broke out. And the Kindertransport Association came about in about 1990, the one in North America, to connect individuals who many years ago were directly involved with the Kindertransports coming. So direct translation is kinder as child and transport, right? And not only connect those children who were now grown adults, but their families and descendants. They also like to educate, and they support and advocate for child refugees and children in need today, which we have so many children who are in need to be advocated for and helped financially. So I became a member of the Kindertransport Association as a K2 or second generation member. And I would say my connection to the Holocaust was when I was 5 years old. My mom was telling her story to her friend's parents, and I heard all of it. I don't know if I was supposed to hear all of it, but I did, and it definitely left an indelible mark on me. And fast forward to 2023, and KTA, Kindertransport Association, put out a call for people for either Kindertransport descendants, first generation, second generation, third generation, to tell their parents' story. And I jumped at the opportunity, and I was in the first cohort of people for the speakers training. And then I had done this before with the Jewish Museum, the Museum of Jewish Heritage, for my father's story, because he's also a survivor. So we met the first cohort of the speakers training. We met, I think there were like maybe 10 of us, and we met for about six or seven sessions. And we had some people who were really good at storytelling, and they told us what they were looking for, little nuggets of information, and trying to tell the story of one person, not 6 million people, because one person's story is a little easier to imagine than 6 million people. So I worked on the story, got feedback from the other people who were in the speakers training. And again, today is the first time I am telling this story.
So you worked on this over, 7 or so sessions with them, but if you first heard the story at 5, this is something that has been part of you for a really long time.
A really long
and-
time. Yes, it was a big part of my identity growing up. And one of my sisters once said, I just thought it was normal that people's parents had gone through this. So, and again, keep in mind that my generation we were coming off World War II, right? So we were baby boomers, and kind of everybody had a war story, whether it was an American war story or from, somebody coming from Europe or wherever, but having a story to tell.
Wonderful. Are you ready to tell the story?
I am.
Okay, wonderful. So we will go, and then I know at home, I think you've been looking at a screen. So once this presentation is over, what we're going to do is we'll turn the presentation off so you can actually just see inside the room. Okay, wonderful.
Great.
Go.
So, yep.
Do you want this?
So this is the story of Eva Lewin. She was my mom. She was born in 1925 and she passed in 2016. So Eva Lewin was born Eva Lifshitz. She was a very courageous woman. She was sent away by her parents from her country at age 13 for her safety, which had to be a very difficult decision for her parents. In spite of this, she still believed there were good people who helped her through her ordeal. People helped her as a refugee and also as an enemy alien in England during World War II. They helped her as an immigrant in the United States. And this is her story, and that's a picture of her with her brother Hans. We do not have a lot of pictures of my mother or anything else because she left with very little. So my mom was really different than other moms in our neighborhood. And I didn't know her as a young German girl. I just knew her as my mom. She was different than the other moms. And when I was growing up, she spoke with a funny accent. She was older than other moms. And she went to work, which in the 1960s was unusual. Sometimes she was a nurse, a substitute nurse at our elementary school. And that was very embarrassing for my sisters and I. And she rode a bike, probably similar to that, to the school in her nurse's uniform and a cape and a starched hat. And we were mortified. But she today, as riding a bike would make her a hipster, and wearing the nurse's cap and a cape would, make her a superhero, right? My mom really did embrace her new country and loved all the freedom she had from being able to speak her mind, something that she couldn't have done. And that could have been embarrassing for me, right? And that she could vote, that she was a citizen. It meant a lot to both my parents. Everyone loved my mom. She was a great storyteller. She had a fun sense of humor most of the time. And she lived fully, but frugally. And she was a very charming woman. I thought she was very strict when I was growing up, but that might have been because her childhood was robbed from her. So Eva was born in Swinemünde, Germany, and it is now part of Poland, way up north. And it was on the Baltic Sea. Eva had an older brother named Hans, and her parents were very loving and doting, and they were Selma and Theodore. And my middle name is actually after my grandfather, Theodore Stia. So they owned a department store in this idyllic seaside city on the Baltic Sea. And You can see what it looked like before and what it looks like now. And my sister Nina and her husband Brian actually went to visit, and Brian brought me some sand back from the beach. Yeah, it was
Oh.
really cool. It was really nice.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
yeah,
Oh my goodness.
yeah. So, Eva and her family led a very nice life in Germany. They were a close-knit family. They were friendly and socialized with their customers from the department store, and they really felt part of a community. Everyone shopped at their store, and they were culturally Jewish, but they were never really religious Jews and seldom went to synagogue. And that's Eva with her grandmother on her maternal side and her brother Hans. The Jewish community was small, about 20 families of the 20,000 inhabitants, but everyone knew everybody. But during the summer, because it was a seaside community, the town swelled, and of course the store did very well during that time. My grandparents were very patriotic. My grandfather, Theodore, fought in World War I, and he lost his thumb, and he walked with a limp due to some injuries sustained in the war. And they were very patriotic Germans. They never thought anything would happen to them because they were Germans first, Jews second. Oh, we missed a slide. That's okay. Yeah.
This one?
Yeah.
Okay.
So when Hitler came to power, so Eva was about 8, that changed everything. He blamed all the bad things that were happening in Germany on the Jews. They were scapegoats, they were bullied, and people were beat up. The Jews were beat up by people who had formerly been their friends. German citizens were being brainwashed, and they wanted someone to blame after, for the financial and economic hardships after World War World War I. Children who were previously friends with my mother would no longer play with the Jewish children, and Jewish children were not really allowed to take part in school. Even their grown adult teachers told them they were no good, and they bullied them in front of their classmates. So when Eva was 12, her family thought it'd be easier to move to Berlin because it was a bigger city. They could disappear. People wouldn't necessarily know they were Jewish. They did not have to wear the yellow star yet. That didn't happen until my mother was out of the country. So they could blend in. They didn't have a lot left. Their store had been taken from them. Their apartment or their home had been taken from them. And while Eva was not happy about the move, she was able to go back to school. It was a Jewish school at this time, so that she could learn again and make friends.
Now, my mother heard about a very philanthropic family in America called the Beerwalds. They decided that they were sending money over to Germany to open kitchens, that's what they called them, where Jews who had lost their jobs, lost their monies and all, could come to every day for their main meal. So she said, I can cook for, they'd have to cook for at least 80 to 90 people every day. She said, I can do that. So she applied for this Beerwald-Küche. She said, I want to own one, have one of these, have these people come to our place for lunch, and that would be our living, because obviously you get paid for this. So they said, okay, you can have that if you find a place to do it. You have to find your place to live in to bring 80 people every day to this place to eat. Well, my mother was a very determined woman, and she went around looking for an apartment or some place to do this. So she was turned down everywhere until she found a place that was a building that was owned by the Jewish organization. They had a Jewish school in there, and it was owned. It was apartments also. Well, there was an empty apartment there, and it was pretty large, and she said, here, I want to do this here. And they said, oh no, we don't want 80 people walking up the stairs. And she shamed them into it. She says, if you, a Jewish organization, won't take the Jews to come here for their mid-meal, then I will give up on the whole world, because we have to give up on the Germans. So have I got to give up on the Jews too? She really did it. And she was a very determined woman, my mother, and she did it. And they were shamed into it, and they gave her this apartment, let her have it. And so she was able to open up this Bärwaldküche, which was now our livelihood. 80 people came every day up the stairs. There was no elevators. They had to come up the stairs. But these people came, and they not only had a wonderful hot meal, they sat around and talked and brought newspapers and told they spoke of nothing but fear of what was going to happen. Now, I was at school when they were there for lunch, but I'd come home before they left because they lingered a long time. They sat most of the afternoon, and I'd come in and I'd hear them all discuss the horrors that was going on and what they were going to do and how they could get out of the country and how they tried to get their relatives out of the country. And so it was a constant discussion of that, and I realized then that obviously everybody's trying to get out of the country, and we ought to be trying too. Also, those people talked about how many of their men, sometimes the husbands suddenly weren't there anymore. They went out for something and never came back.
Deep breaths.
Yeah. So all Jews had to carry special identification cards with them at all times. This was actually my mom's identification card, and every girl and woman had the name Sarah added as their middle name, even though my mom's middle name was was Jenny. And the Jewish boys and men had Israel added as a middle name. And the large J that's in there was for Jew, and it was inscribed on the ID. And if you were stopped on the street and you didn't have your ID, you could be brought to the police station or imprisoned. So my mom walked to school, her new Jewish school, through the Tiergarten, which was a large park with a zoo. And since all the children were Jewish, they could really learn instead of being tormented and ridiculed and hated as they had been in their public schools. So in German, it's called Kristallnacht. In English, it's called the Night of Broken Glass. And now it's being identified as a pogrom, which is an attack on Jews. And this happened on the days from November 9th to 10th in 1938. So my mom was 12, almost 13. And this is what happened to her.
And then, of course, came Kristallnacht. That day, I went to school as usual. I walked by in those streets and I said, why are all these things smashed in? What's all this stuff on the floor, the glass and all that? And I didn't put anything together. I just walked by it. And then when I got to school, and the school was burning. And all along, when kids don't want to do their homework or something, we used to say, oh, maybe the school will burn down. I don't have my homework or something. And the school was burning down. And the teachers, and they kept saying to us, why are you here? Go home. You must go home. Run home fast. And don't talk to anybody. Don't let anybody take you. Please run home quickly. And that's what I did. The Nazis were out there burning our schools, burning our stores, and taking the men off the streets. There, they really were taking the men. And my father was going to hide.
So here are some pictures. They're just archived pictures, nothing that my mother saw that day. But she did race home through the park and the shopping district where she saw much more destruction, with Nazis standing in front of the desecrated Jewish shops, and her fear became unbearable. She ran and she hurled herself through the door of the apartment building and up the stairs where her parents, who were very, very worried about her, waiting, immobilized for their beloved daughter to come home. Her brother Hans had been sent to Palestine because he was a little unruly and they kind of needed to get him out of the picture before he brought more trouble to the family. Eva's parents then confirmed that the horror surrounding them, burning and looting Jewish stores, schools, synagogues, and taking Jewish men away, arresting them for absolutely no reason, and they disappeared forever, or they came back weeks later, battered, beaten, and broken. So after Kristallnacht, Eva's parents realized it was time to get her out of the country. They would have gotten out themselves, but it was next to impossible for adults to leave at this point. They did find out about an opportunity for their daughter to leave Germany. It was called the Kindertransport. England, after hearing about Kristallnacht, was willing to take approximately 10,000 Jewish children. This effort was called the Kindertransport. Children from the ages of, well, they were infants to age 17, that was the cutoff date, would be allowed to take the journey. Arrangements were quickly made for Eva to go to England on the Kindertransport.
Right.
Yeah. So they were given a list of what to pack, and Eva didn't really want to leave her parents, and she didn't want to take the practical items her parents were instructed to pack for her. So she had an argument with them the night before she was leaving, and she went to bed angry with them, as many teenagers would do. And Eva needed this special pass to be able to leave the country. They had to go to, Eva and other Jewish children were instructed to go to a very specific train station in Berlin. They had many train stations, and they had their packed suitcases with absolutely nothing of value. And there wasn't much of value left anyway. So the morning of Eva's departure may have been filled with anxiety for Eva and her parents and all the other people going to the train station, concerned with the unknown and when they might see their children or parents again. They walked to the railroad station with many other distraught and frightened Jews, babies and parents crying. The reality that Eva was now leaving her parents and her country suddenly sunk in. Nazis were at the train station with their shiny black boots and their snarling dogs. Parents had to give their babies over to the older children as they boarded the trains. Everyone was in a terrible state, crying and feeling desperate. Can you imagine handing your baby over to a frightened teenager who now had to be responsible for a baby they didn't even know? And absolutely nobody knew what the future held. So it was a long journey, and cuddling the babies on the long journey was a good distraction. Before crossing the border, Nazi guards absolutely rummaged through the children's suitcases. Crossing the border into Holland was a cause for celebration. They got hot chocolate and biscuits, and they were allowed to say goodbye to you Nazis, good riddance, and hello to a new unknown future. So there was a scary unknown life. Remember, there were no cell phones, no internet, no way to look anything up. The children left the station, the train in Le Havre, France, to board a ship to Liverpool, England. And they took a train from Liverpool to Victoria Station in London, where many of the children were greeted and hugged by relatives. Some of the children were met by family or sponsors, like foster families. No one really spoke German, and Eva was not chosen. Outside the train station, cars drove on the wrong side of the road. So that was like already culture shock. No English, I mean, no German being spoken, and driving on the wrong side of the road. So my mom was left on the platform with about 6 other unclaimed children. And everyone was tired and nervous. Her name, Eva's name, was not called. She felt unwanted and scared. After some confusing minutes, she was instructed in English, which she didn't understand really, to take a few more trains. And with the help of a kind train conductor, she finally arrived at her new home, a new living situation, far from home and familiarity. Can you see yourself leaving home by yourself for a strange new land? So after trains and ships and more trains, Eva arrived in Petworth, where she helped Miss Inman with her hostel. It's like an Airbnb today. And we all met Miss Inman later in life. Eva did not speak English nor understand much English, and Miss Inman did not speak German, so communication was very difficult. Miss Inman did not have children of her own. She was kind, but she wasn't really nurturing, and Eva missed her family, and she was very, very homesick. But Eva did feel lucky and relieved to be in England, and the people were pleasant. Eva's English didn't improve, but she was not yet able to attend school. England declared war on Germany in September of 1939. So it was about 3 or 4 months after Eva had gone to the UK. Bombings brought danger and destruction, so England decided to evacuate children to the countryside for safety. Eva was sent to Sussex and eventually to Wales, where she would be safe. She attended St. Mary's School, which was a boarding school where she helped care for disabled children and received some education. Eva was kind of naive. She didn't realize the school was for disabled children until a girl who greeted her and was walking Eva up the stairs to a dormitory-style room where many children slept, and the girl had an epileptic seizure right on the stairs. Eva had never seen such a thing, and she was horrified until the girl recovered and proceeded to show Eva where she would sleep. It was bedtime soon after, and Eva had a frightful night listening to children breathe with great difficulty and other maladies. In the morning, when Eva went to breakfast, she finally realized that the school was for disabled children. Some were in wheelchairs, others had braces on their legs, some used canes or crutches. The children at St. Mary's had physical and mental infirmities. Eva wanted to help the children while she receives an education at St. Mary's. This helped determine her future. So Eva worked hard to assist the children, from bathing them to getting them outdoors and to classes. She and the other refugee children had to light fires to heat the old drafty school and to help cook and serve food, feed children, and lots of cleaning. The refugee youngsters were free labor at St. Mary's. She made friends with some of the children and other German Jewish refugees. The Germans were considered enemy aliens at this point, even the children working at St. Mary's, because there was war, and you're an enemy of the state if you're in the country where the war is being fought against your country of origin. Some of the school children's parents stayed in touch with Eva after the war, and they were so grateful for her nurturing care of their children. Other children who were also helpers at St. Mary's, shout out to the Schleichhorns who are in the audience at St. Mary's, became lifelong friends. Eva stayed close with the two sisters, Marianne and Ellen, who were also Jewish refugees. The two sisters and their children were like family to us when we were growing up. There were also people from England and Wales who visit us in America, so they became kind of our faux family, which was terrific for us kids, because you crave family, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So what should she do when the war ended? She was grateful to the good people of St. Mary's, but her future there was not promising. She didn't want to be a domestic helper. She wanted to be a nurse. Could she attend nursing school in England? Wasn't so easy. But first she had to find out what happened to her parents and her brother. She felt that at St. Mary's, she would be pigeonholed as an assistant, and that wouldn't allow her a higher education. So she started to look into other options. That's an actual letter that my mother got from her parents through the Red Cross, because during the war, communication was only through letters that were sent through the Red Cross, and it was a maximum of 25 words. This is the last letter that my mother received from her parents. After that, she lost touch with both her parents and her brother. When the war was over, her brother, like many others, was a displaced person. It's hard to imagine not having a country to call your own. Her brother, Hans, did not like Palestine. He had fought in World War II with the British, and they controlled Palestine then. And eventually, he found his way back to Germany, and the choices the British Army gave him were Palestine or Germany. Both choices made him unhappy. He did find out in Germany that his parents and Eva's parents had been murdered in Auschwitz with so many others. They only had each other now. Miraculously, my mother found some relatives in Detroit, and she wrote to them. She asked if they could help her brother immigrate to America because he was so unhappy. But there were language barriers, and lack of education on their part and misunderstandings. And these well-meaning, very distant relatives, also immigrants, said, we'll bring the girl over first and then we'll worry about the boy. So in 1947, at age 22, Eva set sail for America. At least this time she'd know somebody would meet her. It's another unknown country without any brother or relatives. When she arrived, a Russian relative did meet her when she got off the ship, and she went to live in Detroit with them, and they owned a bar there. Eva went through some very serious culture shock there because she was pretty proper, and they were raucous and boisterous and stayed up late because they worked in a bar and slept in the mornings, and they spoke more Russian than English. Eva eventually found work as an aide in a hospital. And the distant relatives, they really were truly happy to help. And they said they would bring her brother over. And she appreciated their kindness, but she really didn't envision this life in Detroit. So through a series of strange and wonderful circumstances, Eva met people from the Organization for Rehabilitation Through Training called ORT, who were impressed with this hardworking refugee. ORT paid for Eva to go to nursing school in New York. It's an organization that transforms lives through education and training, and they are still in existence today. So there was a ORT member, and for some reason she liked my mom and treated her like a daughter. She met Mrs. Finkelstein, the wife of a rabbi and an ORT member. And Mrs. Finkelstein welcomed Eva to New York and gave her a small monthly allowance so that she could attend nursing school. Eva was invited to their Friday Shabbat dinners. She was encouraged to introduce her friends and the young men she met to the Finkelsteins. Eva met her future husband, Jack, on a blind date, and he proposed to her soon after, and the Finkelsteins took care of the whole wedding. Both my parents, Eva and Jack, were Holocaust survivors. They were very excited to start a new life and have a family of their own in America. They loved America and its freedoms. So things were falling into place. Eva became a nurse. She met her husband. And they were very eager to start a family, and they were older than most people who were starting a family. So Eva was a nurse, Jack was a chef. Eva asked a distant relative who did not have children of her own to be our Grammy. It was one of the best things she ever did for us because I had a grandma now, right? Yeah, it was fabulous. I don't know what made me think of that. And our Grammy, Paula Wagner, was so happy to be a grandma to 3 little girls. It was terrific. It was a great relationship. And the family grew. My parents worked really hard to make their American dream come true, and they were happy. And eventually my mom sacrificed her her nursing career to be my dad's partner in a catering business. Everyone loved my mom. She was a good businesswoman. She had a cute accent. She was very professional. And she knew nothing about food, but she had really good people skills. And the family grew. Each daughter had a successful career. We all married. None of us married Jews, which was okay with my parents. They were thrilled. Their dreams were realized. And now they were empty nesters. So they started meeting people from the Kindertransport Association. They even went to the Huguenot village, Le Chambon in France, to honor the people who saved my father and many other Jews. And the German government invited them to visit. And after much trepidation, they did go back and were hosted by the German government.
This is our revenge to Hitler. I say that on every occasion when we have this picture, those pictures. Every year we do it, and every year it is the revenge to Hitler. He did not want this to happen.
And we should never forget a German artist named Günter Demnig created these Stolperstein, or stumbling blocks, these golden bricks. It was a project, and he had them placed in front of homes where Jews, gays, gypsies, and many others once lived. These Stolperstein were laid in front of the apartment building where my grandparents last lived. It has their birth years, the date that they were transported in crowded cattle cars to Auschwitz, and it says they were murdered there. There are also stumbling stones in front of my paternal grandparents' home in Kleinlangheim, Germany. That's it.
You stop the presentation. So you asked me who needed tissues. It was me.
I know, I saw.
There are
I-
tissues
I
around
started
somewhere.
crying.
I left a couple of things around there. So wonderful. That's a lot, and it's important. But what does telling your mom's story mean to you?
Well, not only does it bring her and my dad kind of back to life, I think it helps me to let others know what hate, when seemingly unmitigated and endorsed by others, can do. The flames of hate can get out of control, and they can bring ruin, death, and destruction to a people, a country. It has worldwide repercussions for many years, or maybe even centuries. And will humans really ever learn? It doesn't seem like we stop. Genocide continues today. It's not new. If telling my mother's story can stop and make one person rethink their hate, their bias, their prejudice, then today's presentation has really done its job.
True. You mentioned, I'm a little off script.
Yeah,
here,
okay.
but, you mentioned in the story a few times, everyone loved my mom. Somebody at Ort recognized and loved my mom. So this is a little shout out to the people that are zooming in, because in the social media that we posted about this, a lot of people were like, I loved your mom. I loved your mom. So there was just like over and over again that theme. So if you can bring that love out, and if you can continue to tell the story in that way, then maybe
Yeah.
there will be change.
It's funny because people say, I love your mom. And I always say, well, she's not your mom. So that was my first comment. It's like, yeah, she's not your mom. She's not that easy to live with. She's strict. She's got, she set a high bar for us growing up. But she wasn't overbearing, and she wasn't a helicopter mom at all. She trusted us to do our homework and such. But she was just, she was a good storyteller, and she wasn't afraid to be her true self. She spoke her mind a lot. And I think, I don't know why everybody loved my mom so much. I really, I would have to ask them. Because I can't, I mean, to me, she was my mom.
Yeah. So for those, for those of you that are zooming in, use the chat. Tell us
Please.
why. Tell us why you loved Eva. Okay, but you also brought in that she was different, right? And I think when we're growing up and we're young, that idea of being different sometimes is like, oh my goodness, all eyes on me. But then as we get older, we start to, appreciate that and celebrate that. So what was it maybe that when you were younger, you felt different, but maybe you keep a tradition or something from when you were young going forward?
Right. Yeah, and we've had that discussion, and my parents really embraced America and its culture. Just a little anecdotal story. My father got pickpocketed in Paris, and we went to the police station, and the gendarme there said, well, you look so American. And my father was like, I do? And that's all that mattered to him. I look American. Who cares that I lost my money, my credit cards? I look American. So it was really funny because that was really important. But, we really didn't have a lot of traditions. My parents worked a lot. They weren't home a lot. We didn't eat culturally Jewish food particularly. I mean, they had a couple of weird things that they ate, and we'd go to like this German shop and we'd get some things, but my sisters and I didn't particularly like it.
Uh-huh.
I would say we have more, and I just made this up last night, we have more isms, like sayings that my parents had, whether it was in English or German or Yiddish, and we continue to say them with our kids.
Okay.
And, you know, some of our family doesn't even realize that they're just within our family and they think everybody else knows them too. But so they're like funny little things that we say.
Yeah. So where something once was ripped away, it's replaced with your isms, it's replaced
There you
with
go.
your
Yeah.
love and such
Yeah.
like that. So
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
wonderful. In the video, or in your presentation rather, there are videos of your mom.
Mhm.
And I know when you and I were first discussing this, that was, I had tons of curiosity. I really want to know about that. So will you tell us a little bit more about the origins of those videos that were in the
Yes.
presentation?
Well, shout out to Steven Spielberg, who after the movie Schindler's List realized that the Holocaust survivors were getting older and their stories should be told. And of course, he's into cinema. So he trained people to go into Holocaust survivors' homes and record their testimonies. And they came in and they asked certain questions. So if you listen to my dad's and you listen to my mom's, it's a lot of similar questions, but it's really nice. So I see my 70-year-old parents, I get to visit with them and hear their stories again. And it's really nice. And the Shoah Foundation's been wonderfully generous with sharing those clips with us. And it really helps us tell those stories again. But I think, so the Shoah Foundation, it gives the opportunities to survivors and witnesses of the Shoah, which is the genocide of the Jews, to tell their own stories for research, education, and outreach for the betterment of humankind.
Okay, wonderful. So I have one more question and then we're going to go into questions from everybody. Is there anything pressing in the chat?
Oh,
A lot of like nice things about Eva.
how nice.
Like a great person. If you want me to read those out.
Well, we'll save them in the chat. Let's see how many questions we have, and then we'll go to the testimony. And thank you for that. And we'll save the chat. So
good.
we'll have, yeah,
Good,
so
good.
we'll
Yes,
have
I'd love to
those.
see that.
This is for the memorializing. And again, this is the first time that, Joanne, you're having a chance to tell this story. So maybe next time you can even bring a few things in.
Yeah,
So-
I can find out why everyone loved her.
Yeah. Those moms. Okay, my last question here is, today, again, it's a day of anti-hate. And even before we started talking about this, you had this presentation started. And let me just read some of the things that I was writing down while you were talking. The kind train conductor, right? The English were kind to her, even though she was like, the enemy, right? If you want to think about it that way. In your home, it's what I was hearing in the different things that you were saying is that kindness was more powerful than fear in some ways.
Yeah.
So, do you think that influenced you, like that your mom and likely your dad too were focusing on kindness rather than fear? How do you think that influenced you?
I think I always try to find the good in people. And my mom didn't say this to me, but a very good friend and mentor told me that no matter what, find at least one redeeming quality in everyone. And I think that's really possible to do. And I try to do that all the time, whether it's a family member, student, a friend, right? I mean, I probably wouldn't be a friend if they only had one redeeming quality, but I think I always try to find that. And my mother was she loved to volunteer, and she volunteered herself, she volunteered us, she volunteered my dad. But it was good. I'm glad she did that because I still volunteer today. So, and I think she could make anybody smile. And even though she was strict, she was able to bring out the good in people with her stories or her quirky sense of humor.
It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
What questions might you here have? And I suspect there's some where their questions come. Okay, so we'll take in person first, please.
Nice to meet you.
There's a really famous book called People Love Dead Jews. Dana Horn. James Guerra. Have you ever read that book? Just this.
Another, I read so many Holocaust books. Sometimes it's scary. Okay.
Put dead Jews on a pedestal, like Holocaust Jews, Anna Frank, people that were in the past and are not around anymore, and not live Jews, like have a talk or, spread.
Interesting.
So many Jews have done good for the economy, the world. What is your approach to that and thoughts on that?
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, Jews did a lot of great things. Look at all the Jews that came over here, before Germany wouldn't let them out of the country, from, Einstein to, well, Viktor Frankl, he survived, right? And he wrote this really, I forget what the book's called. Yes, right. Man's Search for Meaning. I think I just don't understand why people ostracize anybody, whether it's a Jew or a person of color, somebody who's Asian. I really don't understand that. But I have to say, sadly, that I had anti-Semitic comments to me as a child, growing up in this idyllic Long Island town, and people. My nickname was JoJo, and people called me Juju, and like to have. I never told my parents that. Like, I didn't want them to know that kind of stuff, but it was hard, and I think we need to just find good in people. And so what if certain cultures have certain strengths, why not celebrate those strengths instead of making it like, oh yeah, all they care about is money. I don't know why Jews are financially successful or can, at some point in history, they were the only people that could be bankers. And I'm not sure why. I never researched that. Huh?
They were not allowed to.
Ah, so they could, okay.
Force.
All right.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. And I wrote down the names of the books here. So
Yeah, thank you.
we'll be able to share resources after this. Are there questions in the chat, or should we?
Giselle has a question.
It's recorded.
We'll
Yes.
send the link when
Yes.
we get it.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's recorded.
It might take a couple of days, but
Yeah.
we'll get you the link.
Yes.
Yeah.
Giselle.
You mean in the kinder
Let me,
transport?
hold on, let me
Yeah.
repeat. For those of you that weren't able to hear it, the question is, how were Eva's parents able to arrange the transport? Did I get that right? Yep. Okay.
So Eva's memory and what really happened are two different things, as I learned from my cohorts, because my mom thought it was like all very cloak and dagger, and it wasn't. The German government gave their blessings to get rid of these Jewish kids, and philanthropic Jewish organizations helped pay. The Quakers, not only, I shouldn't say that, because the Quakers did a lot of the organizing, and so I don't know, it just got paid for. It was magical because the Jews had no more money left to do that.
It was all taken.
Although somebody in my cohort said that not only did her parents have to pay for her and her sister, they had to sponsor one other child financially. So I guess they looked into your financial background.
Okay. Interesting. Any more questions?
Just a lot of testing.
A lot of testing. Okay, so we're going to go to another question here.
Ooh,
Let me repeat
yeah.
that for everybody. The question is, what is one of Eva's most memorable moments in America? Yeah.
I think career opportunity, because she didn't have those opportunities in England, and that's why she left. Career opportunity and freedom. She always, like, she was a comedian, and she would go, "Okay, it's so great that you can say all those things and not get in trouble." So yeah.
Yeah.
And for children, I mean, they doted on us. We weren't spoiled. We had to do a lot of hard work at home, and we had to help my parents in their business, but we were their pride and joy.
Kathy? You're next. Kathy, go ahead.
I want to know if he actually encouraged anyone.
Oh,
Did he what? Encourage anybody?
So
He joined the military.
yeah, so
yeah.
the question for the people at home, the question is, there was a statement, but then the question is, since your father was proud to be an American, was anybody encouraged to join the military?
So yes, and a shout out to our veteran here.
Yes,
Thank you,
thank
Kathy,
you.
serving our country. Actually, and I think a lot of people did this when they came to this country. If you served in the army and then you became a citizen quicker, you were fast tracked to become a citizen. And that was really important to both my parents to become citizens. And just, this isn't part of it, but to, like, for me, when I had my kids, I remember looking in my son's crib and I said, I have to get him a passport right now. Like to show you how the trauma, right? Because my grandparents couldn't leave the country because they couldn't get the paperwork. I wanted to have a passport for him, so if we ever needed to leave, it wasn't going to stop us. And that's when I realized, I'm like, wow, this really has baggage, far-reaching, because I never felt anything like that before. Hi. You did. Most definitely, yes.
So the question is that Joanne's father had a catering company. The question is, do you feel that influenced your career?
Yeah, it definitely influenced my career. I mean, I loved and respected both my parents. I don't think I really thought about becoming a nurse, but I always felt like, well, if I cook, he had a successful business, he was successful, and you can always eat when you're a chef. So
Well, there, yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up.
Hold on. Yeah, the question is, what happened to Hans?
So that Hans is Eva's brother. Just before I was born, my mother got a letter. He got stuck when the wall went up in Germany. He got stuck in East Germany. He couldn't marry the woman whom he wanted to. They had a child together, and he wasn't allowed to marry her because he was Jewish. And he wasn't happy, but we'll never know the truth. Was he murdered or did he die by suicide? We don't really know. But I did, when I worked in Germany, I did go to, it was still East Berlin back then, and I went and visited his grave. And that brought some closure to me.
So you traveled between East and West?
I did.
You were able to do that because you're American, you were able to do that?
It was like the 1980s, and I just let anybody could really, I mean, you had to show your ID, and I think it was only like maybe 12 hours that you could stay. You couldn't stay long. Yeah. Mhm.
What are some advice you may have to students like this?
So to shorten the question, it's in the chat. To shorten the question is, how have you overcome some of the prejudices that you experienced as a child, and share them with students?
Advice.
What advice do you have to students? Okay.
So it's a good question. So some things you can't hide, right? The color of your skin, your gender, or if you're if you're gender neutral. But I grew up, I don't tell people I'm Jewish, which I know, like when I told you that, you were shocked. We went to an exhibit here and I told Professor Goodlad, and she's like, really? I'm like, yeah, because I've had too many people not like me. They don't know me, they just don't like me because I'm Jewish. It's like the weirdest thing. So I never tell people that I'm Jewish. And then once they know me, of course, I mean, it's not like I never tell them, but I keep it kind of quiet. And my mother, we had that discussion later in life, and she said, yeah, neither do I. So what advice do I have?
That's trauma, right? But that's trauma.
It is.
That's
It
real
is.
trauma.
It's,
To not be able to be who you are to everybody is trauma.
yeah, I'd say probably let people know who you are. I think I'd like to say we've become a more accepting world, but I don't always see it. I mean, whether it's gender or religion, it seems to be the stem of so many problems. that we have. So I don't, if anybody has advice, please share it.
We'll go here and then to you. Yeah, go ahead. The question is, how does being the child of Holocaust survivors affect your
Jewish
Jewish
identity.
identity?
Well, from what I just said, I don't always tell people I'm Jewish. So we grew up a little bit religious. We went to temple sometimes. My father had a beautiful voice. He would have been a cantor if he'd been able to stay in Germany. Then my parents, when they had the catering business, there was no way we could have, like, we just didn't go to temple any longer. When we had my husband, he's not Jewish, but he was like, yeah, we can bring the kids up Jewish. It's not a problem. And we kind of got into going to temple and synagogue. Many of those people are in the audience today from my former temple. So I think to give my children a Jewish identity was important to me.
I heard you say about that before, that your grandparents, your mother's parents, they were like German first, then they were Jewish. I know it's like a big discussion amongst Jews, like, are you an American Jew or you are a Jewish American? How do you feel about that, and what do you consider yourself?
Yeah.
That's a tough question.
That's a tough-
That's a very loaded
It's
question.
a tough question.
I have to be honest, I've never really thought about it, but I was reading these for I saw this exhibit, I Am a Jew, previously when it was hanging at the library. And I think, culturally, there's culturally Jewish people. There are religious Jewish people. I think if you made me answer, I'd probably say I'm an American first and then I'm a Jew. It's easier.
Yeah.
That's
But and in reading this exhibit, and it was when we were planning on doing this, it was important that these were up, because I think I am a Jew. What does that mean to people, right? What does it mean to be able to reveal that and practice that? And you went back to synagogue, right? You went back to that community of around religion for your children, and I think that does that help define you as a Jew, right? And I think that's touching. So we are nearing the end of their time here, but we'll go see if there's another question there, but we'll go question here. Yeah.
I teach your voice is very, very important.
Thank you.
I teach English, I teach ESL,
Mm-hmm.
and every semester I start out with, how many people are in the world? No idea. How many Jews are in the world? You go through Muslims, you go through Hindus, I ask the question, 20 billion Jews in the world. Really? There are only 7.8 billion people in the world. I don't know.
Yeah, they're
For example, I would love to teach my class. We don't really have very many students.
no.
And so when I ask my students, why do you think there are so many Jews on the planet? They say, because they have all the money and they're most important. Good. Name some important Jews, I say.
Yeah.
Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, and he finally at 15 gets to Mark Zuckerberg. So I'm hoping that our students, I did not feel that side until like 5 days ago. And I'm annoyed that it's here. But
So am I, believe me.
That's no, that was
That's not our decision. Yeah, I know. It's been pretty
it
awful.
was not our first choice.
they will share this with the rest of the community. We have a Park Slope, Jewish Affinity Group. They would love to hear your story.
Sure.
Your voice is so important, and I'm so grateful.
Thank you.
All right, so the testimony,
Can I say one thing?
yeah.
What my sister, my sister Judy always says, because she does these presentations in Massachusetts, and not this particular one, but she does a presentation to like 8th graders when you're reading all those kind of books. And she tells, and so they're 13, 14 years old, ask your parents, ask your grandparents questions about their history, because I still have a million questions from my parents and I can't ask them anymore. And it's so important, whether it's we have no recipes, we have no connection to certain things. And until my sister, one sister and I, Judy and I, went to see my dad's hometown in Klein-Langheim. And then my other sister went to see my mom's hometown. But it like, just try to make some connections with your past. It's really important, and ask those questions. Connections and questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was
Thank
it.
you all for coming. Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
So just, again, we're going to share all of this testimony, but a few things.
What did people love
Um,
about Eva?
Loved her accent.
can't
She
replicate it.
loved people.
Did.
That was that was repeated. Made us family.
Oh,
This is the first time somebody's hearing the story, and it was profound. Eva's kindness is one of Henry's favorite memories. So I think again,
oh, Henry.
it all falls in line with this day of anti-hate. It's her kindness that brought love to her.
She nursed him and she catered a party for $5 for him for his parents.
Oh, so something about $5 here. Yes.
Yeah, the $5
Yes.
party.
Yes. This was fabulous. I remember Eva. I hear you mention that you've had, that we got that question down. Yeah, we'll share everything. It would be too long to read all the love, but thank you for all the love that you did share, and
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
it's an honor, an honor.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
You asked me some really tough questions. I've never considered Jewish American, American Jew. I've never had to consider that.